Well, welcome back, loyal listeners to Radio Entrepreneurs. We are trying to spend our time focusing on this new economy. What does it take to be successful? What does it take to keep people employed and productive, building strong cultures? My next guest, I had fun talking to him before we even started the interview, Jonathan Crafts, partner at Fields and Dennis. I think we're going to talk about a topic that I know I'm pretty excited about, but I'll let you introduce it, Jonathan. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So yeah, we were talking a little bit before we started about the white collar crime world, and I have some great experience in the background there. I kind of do white collar and the civil litigation side, more corporate. The corporate side, I think, is pretty much my area of expertise. But you know, those overlap quite a bit whenever you're representing a company. So, I mean, basically what I do is I represent corporations, primarily the executives, with pretty much anything that comes up in their industry. And so I've had some fun experience representing some white collar defendants. Primarily, I guess, accountants is where is my expertise. At least in the past few years, that seems to be
and these accountants, what have they been accused of in general?
Well, I've represented accountants involved in pyramid schemes and also in, allegations of stealing money from their employers. For whatever reason, accountants seem to be the primary focus of my business for the past few years. But
they're good at it.
Sorry?
They have keys to the vault. They understand
Exactly.
financials. They have the tax returns. They have the personal financial data. They have all that information. And
Right.
And some of them are very jealous of their clients who they think that they're smarter than, who are making more money than them.
Right. And I mean, and also the corporations really end up relying on them. I mean, it's accountants and bookkeepers. I mean, people who are doing both jobs because the companies rely on them entirely for their finances. And I'm not sure everybody is paying as close attention as they should in some corporations. And so some accountants and bookkeepers are able to get away with a lot of malfeasance in their job.
I've seen too much of this in Massachusetts, especially, but white collar sort of negligence or casualness with accountants. Isn't there something they can do on the other side to sort of tighten the screws to make sure these things aren't happening?
Of course. I mean, what you have to do is, I mean, you really have to, let me think of the best way to put this. With accountants largely have control of the finances of the corporation. And a corporation, especially the executives, need to pay attention. They need to have an idea of where all their money is going. And they can't just rely on one person to control the corporation's finances. So I think what happens is largely the trusted individuals are the ones who you need to have essentially compliance with these accountants. You need to have a certain set of books and records requirements when you're working with the accountants, so that more than one person is looking over the finances. You can't just have one person in charge. I mean, I've seen situations where the bookkeeper or the accountant essentially approves a wire transfer without getting the approval of those higher up. And if you don't have with the bank accounts, if you don't have the proper protections in place, like the two-step authorization, the authorization of somebody higher up in the company, and you're relying entirely on the bookkeeper or the accountant to make that wire transfer, then corporations can be put at serious risk.
So, I agree with you. And it's funny, every once in a while I come across a privately owned family business, and let's say the next generation is complaining that dad still wants to sign all the checks. Mm-hmm. And I always say, well, that's not that bad an idea. Yeah. My father was like that. There wasn't a dollar that didn't go in and out that he didn't get his nose on. And right. People get a little bit more casual in today's world. Do you find that that's a problem as well, that people are getting a little too casual in terms of how much they're trusting their financial people?
I don't know if it's necessarily that it's too casual. I think what's happened is that it's more of a splintering. CEOs, they focus on their sphere, and then they have various people underneath them. And I think what's happened is people have become less generalists as time has gone on. I mean, it used to be that, people had their hands in a lot of different pies. And so what's happened is to streamline corporations and the way they function, I think there are divisions between the different spheres, like the finance. And I think what ends up happening is there tends to be less oversight for whatever reason, just to make things more efficient. It did used to be, everybody used to have it so that the higher ups would have to check things off. I think with, internet transfers, internet and ease of use, essentially trying to make things easier and quicker for corporations, what ends up happening is that one person can now make a much larger impact on the corporation's bottom line than I think. There were always instances in the past where that happened, but I think it was more difficult to do that than it is now.
So again, I don't know if you mind me asking these questions. I'm thinking about the accountant who's working on it, and you've probably dealt with this sort of psychology, and I'm just wondering if there's any particular pattern. Do you think these people from the beginning were susceptible, or something happened along the line in their life or their careers or family events that made them feel like they were entitled to this, or that pushed them into it? Is there a character, do you think, that's consistent with this type of person?
When you meet these individuals, they're not the type of people you would think. Largely, I'm of course mainly criminal defense, right? I defend those who were accused, so I'm probably more sympathetic to that side. But I don't think it's necessarily a character flaw. What I do tend to see is that it doesn't tend to happen all at once unless there's some life event that requires immediate funds. What I do see frequently is that it's incremental changes, right? Somebody might take $100 to go get a meal or something like that. Then they see how easy that is, and then they start to think that maybe that's acceptable, and it just grows over time. Those are the people. As a criminal defense lawyer, I sympathize with them. I understand the corporation's perspective. In the end, like, these people ended up taking a lot from the company and hurting the company's bottom line, hurting the company's future. But each little step is largely just one step further. The person doesn't necessarily realize what they're getting themselves into, and only towards the end do they start to realize it. There are, of course, individuals who will just jump right in and know exactly what they're doing. But I have largely represented people who it's more of the incremental leading to the large impact on the corporation.
Right, but you did mention earlier Ponzi schemes, and that seems to be more of a grand plan for
Right.
income generation that goes on for years. And that is not, that might be caused by a life event, yes, creating constant cash flow needs.
Right.
But that seems to be a little bit more intentional from my perspective.
It is, although, I have to say that the accountants I represented, they weren't the primary bad actors, right? So they were essentially, in the one that I'm thinking of right now, it was a multi-level marketing, an MLM scheme. And there were two people who really knew what was going on with the company, and the accountant was fed poor information. The biggest problem with my client was that I don't know if he necessarily dove into the numbers as much as he should have, but a lot of these times, with a lot of these cases, what happens is the people who are actually the bad actors, the one who come up with a plan, they hide the information in these systems that nobody can understand, right? And so, the one I'm thinking of, there was a foreign corporation originally started it. So it was somebody who didn't necessarily speak English, and then the numbers, nobody could understand what this program did. And this was supposedly the back office where all the money was, maintained, like all the accounts were maintained. And so the accountant essentially got a watered down version of it. He should have done more he should have done more due diligence. He should have checked on it more, asked more questions. But, in the end, what happens is the accountant gets accused for others' malfeasance because he just didn't do proper due diligence.
Well, trust is a dangerous sword, and so is ignorance. Trust
Right.
you can potentially fix. You can't always fix stupid, as you know. And I think in business, you got to be careful with trust, because it's usually people you like who you trust, and it's usually, I would think you'd agree that it's people who you've trusted who have taken advantage of situations.
Right.
So,
Right.
it's
And there seems to be a power imbalance, and the person who trusts the person who does the bad stuff, essentially, there's an imbalance between power, and the person who essentially does the bad act doesn't necessarily feel like they have enough control, or doesn't feel like they're getting compensated in the appropriate way. And that's frequently what I see, is that there has to be some kind of explanation for taking money from companies when we're talking about that.
Well, Jonathan, and we've been speaking with Jonathan Crafts, partner at Fields and Dennis. I love talking to you, if you can't tell, about these things. Again, it's been amazing for me through my career how many times I've seen companies get a little too casual about numbers, trusting partners, trusting accountants, trusting, people the bookkeepers, because, that's the way life is, And so I'd love to have you back on again and again and again to talk about these things, because I think this is critical to business survival. But if somebody didn't want to see you again on our show, but did want to find you, how would they find you?
I mean, my firm has a website. I'm trying to get involved. My goal here is to try to get involved in the Boston community. I'm trying to get, more involved in the legal community. But I mean, I'm right on fieldsdennis.com is the website. Anybody who wants can reach out on email. My email is on there. I mean, we're located in Wellesley, but I've practiced most of my career in New York and Boston. So I'm eminently mobile as well. And I can really get anywhere to help anybody out.
Oh, that's very good. And I want to thank you for being on the show today. Remind everybody this is Radio Entrepreneurs.